Good evening and welcome to the Tower of Now, inside, outside on Wellness Wednesday. I'm Coach Mitchell.
And I'm Coach Darren.
And tonight we are going to be talking about getting not just started or not just about growing your own, forgive me, but about how to get started. Coach Darren is going to take this episode and he's going to walk you through the practical process of solutions versus just talking about growing your own. So, with that being said, I'm going to step out of frame. I'm going to let our health and wellness certified coach Darren take over and show you some practical ways to getting started in growing your own garden.
All right. Again, good evening, and thank you, Coach Mitchell. As Coach Mitchell said, I just want to go over some fundamentals. Now, we've talked about some of these things in past episodes, but I just want to give it a little structure tonight so that it would really lead you to starting and kind of, get rid of the myths or the roadblocks that may be preventing you from starting to grow your own food. My first question to you is, why haven't you started? When I ask that to most people, they usually they don't have enough space, their location, or they don't know how, which I can understand because I used to believe that too, until I actually just, one day decided to give it a try. And then since then, I've just been learning more and more. Now, let me just put out for total transparency or a disclaimer is I am not an experienced gardener. I still consider myself a newbie. But what I am is I'm an experienced instructor, college instructor, corporate trainer. So one of my passions has been sharing knowledge. So I'm going to try to do that tonight. If there are any experienced gardeners out there, please jump in. For those who maybe view this later, if you have any questions, please, just ask. And again, I'm not an experienced gardener, but I do want to give you some fundamentals and some basics that will get you started. All right, so, why would you want to grow your own food? Well, you're going to have a certain experience and fulfillment, of growing your own food. There is something that you're going to that you are going to experience when you get into this process, of growing your own food. One of the things about growing your own food also is the connection to your own health. There are many benefits to growing your own food, and one of them is giving you the ability possibly to have food in season. Now, and that's not exactly or, not perfect because it does depend on where you are. But you can even work around that, and I'm going to, share some of the things that you can kind of create an artificial environment. All right. Gardening also offers you, and where did I put, oh, there they go. Okay. Gardening also offers you an extended relationship with, with the world around you because you're attached to nature. So that's going to be real important. You'll get an up close, relationship with nature, which has its own health benefits, one being what is known as vitamin N. There is such thing as called, that's referred to as a vitamin N deficiency. Please look it up, Google it, and you will find that, when we are not connected to nature, we tend to suffer in different ways. All right. Also, when you're growing your own food, the plants will provide you, seeds that you can then grow, especially this really more applies to fruits that you can then plant in future seasons. So here are some of the basic things that you're going to need. Naturally, you're going to need seeds, seedlings, or scraps. Now, your seeds, as we've mentioned in past episodes, you can buy them, such as, and I recommend for those starting out, buy your seeds from the dollar store. There are places where you can get better seeds, but I think in the beginning, as you're learning, buy, inexpensive seeds if you're not saving your seeds, which is the next thing I want to mention. But, you just want to get, some seeds. Here, we keep a variety of seeds. right here, beets, lettuce, carrots, or, we have a bunch of these seeds, which are seeds that we've saved, and again, this is my preference, to save seeds. Now, why do I buy seeds? Because with certain things, I don't have saved seeds. So that's why I may buy. And again, I also do it when I'm just experimenting, which is one of the things that you want to do when you start this process. You have to be open and willing to experiment with growing. The other things is, you can grow from seedlings. Now, what are seedlings? Those are the little plants that you may see at, nurseries or big box stores. You can buy those and use those to get started as well. And the other thing is growing from scraps. And again, you may have seen us in previous episodes. This is a scrap. And it's just, we've all had potatoes that start to sprout in the closet, in our pantry. And this is one that I basically I cut off the sprout part. And now what do we normally do with that? We tend to throw them out. Sometimes we throw out the whole potato, which again, just not how nature was worked. Remember, in nature, nothing goes to waste. We need to learn to maximize that. All right, so here is a potato, cut off the end, put it in just a bit of water, and you may see that there are a bunch of roots. So this right here, can be planted. And where will it be planted? Right here is basically, you see two small pots that each pot has, I see we have a guest that joined us. Good evening, Tiffany. What you'll see here is two pots. One pot has a white potato scrap and one pot has a red potato scrap. You can guess by the color of the tags which one is which. All right. Now, they were placed in here the other day, and these scraps will eventually grow. And then once they start to sprout, and I think I see one sprouting actually in the pot, they will then be transferred to bigger pots. And each one of those, believe it or not, in nature doesn't basically have, for most of the things that we grow, it doesn't have a 1-to-1 ratio. I think pineapples might be one of the fruits that one pineapple plant may initially produce one pineapple plant, but it will produce, again, what they call pups, which will then lead to additional pineapple plants. But like this one potato sprout will lead to basically a bushel, for lack of a better word, of potatoes. Now think about that. This one scrap, throw it in a pot with some soil, and you can begin growing potatoes.
Coach, can you talk about how long you rooted that for? I see roots.
Yes. This, I don't have my notes, and I don't have it on here, but yeah, this, I'm going to say maybe a week. Yeah, maybe in a week and a half before it starts to get this, these roots, and then it will go in a pot, and the pot of soil that may take another. Well, actually, this one is already starting to show a plant, and this is on the 25th. Today is what, the 28th?
Right, and so you just took those out of the pantry from potatoes that had sat and spudded.
And spudded, yes. And like I said, we normally used to throw these out. At least I did, until I started learning how to garden and realizing, again, I keep repeating this, in nature, nothing goes to waste. So take this potato, and you can actually get pots specifically made for, growing potatoes, because potatoes, unlike, say, tomatoes, potatoes grow underneath the soil, whereas, say, tomatoes grow above. So you can get seeds, seedlings, or scraps. Now, what do you choose to grow in? They refer to as container. You can grow directly in the soil, and as we mentioned before, when starting out, that may not be ideal or based on where you are or your surrounding. If you live in an apartment, you may not have access to, soil or a backyard. Well, you can get around that by simply growing in pots. And there are advantages to doing that. Even if you have a backyard, You may not have soil that's readily available or that is conducive to growing. Whereas if you grow in a pot or a grow bag or a raised garden bed, any of those, you have a little bit more control over preparing your soil. So there's your container, and then your container can be anywhere from a plastic pot to, again, just want to show you something for starting out. You see, these are seed trays. Now, these we picked up the other day and from a liquidation place for $3 a piece, and each, and this particular tray has 72, little seed compartments. So we really could start 72 different plants in this one tray. Now this tray, again, I believe you could probably buy it from the dollar store. We happen to get it from a liquidation place. Dollar store will charge you $6 for it. We happen to get it for $3. So there you go. Even at $6, very inexpensive to start. But you could really, start growing it almost about anything. I've seen people use their paper towel, cardboard paper towel rolls, empty rolls to plant, seeds. All right. The other thing is your media. Well, your media is what? You got soil, which we've talked about before. And if you're starting, you want to get something, like soil like this. You want to get soil that's specifically, made for, seedlings or seeds. Slightly different than, soil that you may get if you're going to plant in the ground. You want to get potting soil, and there is a slight difference for soil that's used for, again, seeds. As a plant grows, you can then switch soils. And again, I'm going to try to keep this simple. It does, I just want to, again, put another disclaimer out there. It does get a little bit more complicated as, I'm going to actually change that word, not complicated, a little more sophisticated as you move down the path. So there are other things that you have to factor in. I just want to remove some of the doubt in your mind that may keep you from starting. The rest is that once you start, you're going to learn as you grow. So you got three things there. We talked about, what you're going to use to grow your seeds, your seedlings, your scraps, any of those, your container, whether it's a pot, whether it's a bag, again, whether it's your paper towel container, doesn't really matter. Most of the things will work. And then what you're going to use, again, your media is your soil. All right. Again, you can use soil. You can actually use, again, just water if you're doing a hydroponic approach, which is also becoming very popular. So here's some of the things that you want to, factor in when you start this process. And again, don't let any of this keep you from throwing some seeds in a pot of soil and letting nature take over. So one of the things is soil temperature. Now, when I started, I never even thought about that being a factor. Actually, I didn't think about much. I was one of those people, I just threw some seeds in the pot, and then when something started growing, I began to learn a little bit more. And then that was the first year. And after that, I started learning more. And now going into another year, I think I'm a little bit more prepared than what I was looking back. But you want to look at your soil temperature. All seeds have a temperature range with a preferred temperature to germinate, meaning, when that seed opens up and the plant starts to come out. So you want to look up, and I'll provide most of these on, the Go and Grow Facebook page, but you want to know what the ideal temperature range and preferred temperature is for your seed. Now, when you're starting out, and especially again indoors, which is what I'm encouraging people to do now, is you may need to get a heat mat to increase the temperature that you need for your soil to be in order for the seeds to germinate. Again, you can get a heat mat off of Amazon, starting roughly about, I think when we got ours, we may have paid like $16 for two. So again, very inexpensive. So what I covered so far may have cost you less than 10, another, 12 to $15 for a heat mat if it's necessary. There's other ways of doing it where you don't need a heat mat to germinate, your seeds. But the other thing is you want your soil moisture. Now, how do you get your soil moisture? You can do misting, if you get a little, I had a misting thing around here, which I've showed you before. Thank you, Coach Mitchell. All right. Something like this, or a spray bottle, again, from the dollar store. And you may, mist your plants every so often. I also, have these, which I may have showed you before. We got these on sale they're really just humidifiers, miniature humidifiers. We got these from Aldi's, for like $5 a piece. So that's another option. Or you can use a plastic bag. I have, something here. Here are some tomatoes and peppers that are in a seed tray, stuck in a Ziploc bag, that, we do make it a habit of saving Ziploc bags that have not been spoiled or have not contained any meat or, anything that may cause a problem. We basically save them and use them for things like this, or when you got a bunch of little knickknacks, you throw them in a bag, all right, as opposed to using a brand new Ziploc bag. Again, concept is not letting things go to waste. So that's another thing that's part of this journey. So by using also something like this, all right, again, you get it from dollar store. I think to pronounce the French name for this is a cloche. Yeah, cloche, or we just call it a plastic dome. All right, let's keep things simple. So that basically will cover your plant to create humidity. So again, just some of the ways to ensure that your seeds have the proper moisture. The other thing is oxygen. Again, just like us as humans, plants need oxygen. So you will usually find, like say in your seed trays, they will sit inside of another tray. And sometimes you will see people put something underneath this tray, all right? Just so there's some airflow in between the two trays, all right? Because your plants need oxygen. Let me just kind of swing back for a second. Thank you. So again, just want to show you this is it's kind of a two-piece tray, all right? You have where you put your soil in with the seeds, and then you have this tray. And this tray, again, depending on, actually you'll find that in the bottom tray, there are little kind of like ledges that will allow this to sit up just enough so that you're getting some airflow underneath. All right. But going back to our scraps, you will see here, just got to show you this one. Okay, this right here is just an avocado seed that is about ready to go into a pot of soil. But you see the root and you see the plant growing. Now, this, again, because we took it from an avocado that we consumed, the seed didn't cost anything. It was already paid for when we bought the avocado. Threw it in some water, it starts to grow, and it's growing a plant. And what I've always recommended to people is certain seeds may not produce additional, may not produce any fruit from it, but it will produce a plant. So you will end up with a nice plant, worst case scenario. And just going through the process is beneficial. So this one is about due to go in some soil.
We'll talk about how you can, the different ways you can start the avocado.
Oh, okay. In terms of, yes, Coach Mitchell, growing, you can, like I said, the avocado, the way we started this, because again, you want to get the seed to germinate. So basically, the seed to open up and allow the plant, to begin growing. We do these by putting them in a wet paper towel, sticking them in a Ziploc bag, again, a used Ziploc bag most of the time, and putting them in a dark place. And then just leaving them there until the seed just opens up. That creates the humidity that the seed needs. And then once it opens up and it shows, a root coming out, we then hover it over water, and then the root will continue to grow. So as what I just showed you, you'll see there's a long root at the bottom. And then after that, you see this long plant. And this was actually placed over water on January 27th. So this is about a month worth of growth.
So not long at all.
No, not long at all. And I think it was under the sink. It may have been a week or two. But again, you stick it under the sink in a Ziploc bag, if it's wrapped in a paper towel, and you just let it go. Doesn't require day-to-day maintenance. And same thing here, it doesn't. We use the same method with our lemon seeds, again, to get them. And that's not the only way, but it's a very inexpensive and kind of a practical way. So it doesn't require a lot of your attention, other than you do need to check on them, because I've had seeds that I forgot about that basically molded and then they had to be thrown out. So we talked about the oxygen, and we'll talk about the air temperature. So it's also important just to be mindful of the temperature as you're starting indoors. And I think the average range is probably like between 50 and 70 degrees, which is probably in line with normal indoor temperatures. We'll say during the winter. Some people may have it a little warmer in their homes, but you don't want to get up if you, like 80, 90 degrees. The temperature may become too high, but for the most part, your seeds will probably be okay. You can also, instead of placing them underneath, the sink, I've been told actually by just the other day that another good place is on top of your refrigerator. Now, that makes me think of something. How many of you have a thermometer that, you can point to someone's forehead?
Infrared.
Yeah, infrared. Look at that thermometer and see if there's a switch on the side to do surface temperature. And I just want to quickly say, Terrell, you joined us. Good evening. How are you? But if you have one of those infrared thermometers, you can also use that to point towards your soil to get an idea of how warm your soil is. Because again, that's something that you need to factor in. All right. So air temperature, we talked about soil temperature, talked about oxygen. The other thing is,
Coach, before you
yes.
go on, I just want you to hover over the thermometer and emphasizing that you probably already have the tools that
Yes.
you need on hand.
Yes.
And just as simple as a thermometer with a toggle for surface versus body temperature that's just
Absolutely, yeah, beneficial.
That's a win right there, right?
Yes, because that's what we're trying to do, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Coach Mitchell, is we're trying to remove as many roadblocks to keep you from getting started. So one of the ways of doing it is convincing you or showing you how to use things you already have. Again, like the Ziploc bags, if you're using them, the benefit of reusing plastic material is it also delays them reaching the dump, because when plastic hits the dump, and unfortunately it's hitting the oceans, it creates a whole nother problem. So you want to get into the habit of reusing things as much as possible. All right, so let's talk about light. Now, we all know that plants prefer sunlight. That's the preferred method. Every plant, that you may grow prefers direct, indirect, sunlight for a certain amount of time. You know what? But when you're starting out with your seeds, what you want to do is your seeds, when you're trying to get them to germinate, they don't really need light. Because you kind of think about it, you put a seed in soil and it's really in darkness. So they don't really need light. It's not until you see them pop up through the soil that now you want to be concerned about making sure they have enough light. And you need to know how much light your particular seed needs. All right. So I'm really giving general, information here. It does get a little bit more particular with certain seeds, meaning certain vegetables or fruits. But you want to factor in that every seed is going to eventually need light. Now, you can put it on a windowsill, and the preference is always put it if you have a south-facing window. If you're not sure, guess what you could do? Your phone has a compass on it. You can simply whip out the phone, bring your compass out and just walk through your house, and you will see it will point, which direction is south, and see if you have a window in that area. So again, using what you already have. If you don't have a south-facing window, it's not the end of the world. Just find a window that has some sunlight, utilize that, or even better, use artificial light or a grow light. Now, if you can, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but you see right here, this is a grow light. And it's a 3-part, 3 lights in one, again, from Amazon. Or this right here, this is a grow light bulb that happens to just be in this particular lamp. Believe it or not, I bought this lamp probably 30 years ago because I was in an office that didn't have windows to outside. I only had indoor windows. And I kept it. And this is just a light bulb. I think 2 of these light bulbs may cost $8. Mm-hmm.
Coach, can you use just a regular light bulb, or due to the pandemic, most people have their lights that, that they use for videoing and whatnot. So
Yes.
is it possible to use those lights to help jumpstart your growing?
What most people do,
Question before you go on to my question. Question from Terrell is, do those lights actually come in different wattages?
Oh, okay.
Good question.
Yes, good question. I will actually tell you the preferred wattages, all right? These light bulbs all are pretty much in the same range, but to both questions, all right? One, some experienced gardeners who do indoor gardening say pretty much any light will suffice, but you do want lights with certain brightness to be more effective. And one of those is to say you can buy regular shop lights. The fluorescent, you buy fluorescent or LED lights, and LEDs are preferred because they draw less power. But you get, the shop lights that you might see in a workshop, they usually have chains on them. They will, I recommend those because the chains allow you to adjust the height of the light.
Which is important.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, okay, good question. Trust me, we did not practice this. Mitchell's just, Coach Mitchell's just throwing out these questions, and I'm glad she is. Why do you need to adjust the light? Because when your seeds first sprout, if they will always reach toward the light. Now that's kind of symbolic for many ways. All right. All right. It's kind of just the beauty of nature. Always reach toward the light. And what will happen if the light is far away, the vegetables, and you'll see this a lot, say with tomatoes or say peppers, they become really thin. Right? What they call leggy. Because what they're really trying to do, they're trying to reach up towards light. So to get thicker stems on your plant, you want to bring the light down to roughly about 2 to 3 inches above your soil.
Watch that beautiful avocado.
Yes, sorry, no, we don't want to damage that. So the ones with the chains on them, they allow you to adjust. So ideally, if you had the space, you get a shelf, and you mount some LED, again, shop lights. You hang them from the bottom of one shelf to cover your plants on the other shelf. If you can't do that, just again, go to Amazon and just type in grow lights. And you get the light bulbs, and then you can use a regular lamp. Like, again, some gardeners say pretty much any light will suffice, but some are better than others.
So the ring lights you're saying are probably good just to hold you over until you get a grow light?
Yes.
Because you have that area in the radius that is open where there's no light radiating or emanating from the ring. Is that?
I would probably say it may hold you over, but I wouldn't depend on it because, they have something they call a footprint. And the footprint of your light is how far it spreads out, So that's why the shop lights, they tend to have a bigger footprint. And even, these light bulbs, you got to position it just right, like I have to position just right, so it spreads out over several trays.
So the question Terrell has is, as the growth progresses in your plant, do you decrease the light?
You don't decrease it, you actually raise it further away from the plant, because the plant will continuously it'll actually try to reach the light.
So what is the distance between the light and the plant on each stage of growth?
You start out from like 2 to 3 inches, and then you move it up to like 4 to 6 inches. At a certain point, you can kind of just raise the light. When the plant starts to get some strength to it, and you could tell it'll look healthy and strong, then you can make adjustments. Maybe then you can move that plant outdoors.
Okay.
And where we'll get, practical sunlight, regular sunlight. In a future session, we want to talk about that transition. Now, I will tell you, I've also learned that you can't just take a plant that you started indoors and put it outside. I made that mistake. I thought, why not? I'm putting it in a place that it's naturally, where it belongs. Yes, where it belongs. And that reminds me, and I may have shared this story with you, Coach Mitchell, something I learned as a child with fish. I brought a fish home, from the pond and put it in my fish tank at home. Next day I woke up, the fish was dead. And I'm wondering, well, I took it out of the park. I put it in clean water. What happened? And my father broke it down to me. He said, you cannot do that. Even though your intentions was putting it in a clean environment, it put the fish in shock, and the fish died. So you can't just make that transition. So there's a whole thing called the hardening off process, which we'll talk about on another session, where you begin making that transition. All right. So you don't need the light for the germination phase. You need the light for the growth phase. The other thing too, you just seed the soil content. Now, again, we're talking about planting in soil. There are other methods of growing your own food, especially indoors, that don't require soil. But we're not going to cover that. We're talking about basically using soil. So why is soil important is because your roots need a place to go. So when you place the seed, in the soil, it gives a place where as the seed germinates, for it to start its growth process. Now, here is something you want to be mindful of, is that not every seed is going to germinate, meaning it's not going to open up and it's not going to produce a plant. What are some of the reasons for that happening? Your soil may be too wet, or your soil could be too dry. Also, it could be in a container where you're not getting enough airflow to the soil. So you want to factor that in. Here's something else that I also learned is, another tool.
Another tool.
Yes.
Method that a beginner might want to invest in?
Yes. All right. Just kind of jumping back. Here is where you have, this is a I'm trying to, a three function,
Three-way
a three-way,
meter.
tool, meter. All right. It measures the pH level. All right. It measures the moisture in the soil. And it also has, I think this has the temperature
Yes.
on it. And there are some gardeners who really say when it comes to the soil moisture, oh, first of all, you can get these for $10 on, again, Amazon, or probably you can get them from a big box store. But here you got basically a three functional tool. Or you can go, when it comes to, again, soil temperature, we said you could use the same thermometer that you have in your house for taking the temperatures of, people in your home who may have, maybe sick. Use that same thermometer. And here is something too. You know what this is? This is a chopstick. Now, if you ever went to supermarket, like we pick these up, we go to supermarket, they have, the chopsticks, over in the area that offers sushi. Get these chopsticks, or you can use a knitting needle, which may be longer depending on your pot. And you really could just put this down in the soil, and when you pull it up, it will tell you more or less if your soil is moist, because you'll see, little bits of dirt, soil on the chopstick.
And if you bake, it's the same concept.
Yes, absolutely. So you got that. Again, just using a chopstick, or, I believe if you have a knitting needle, or basically anything that you just stick in your pot, pull it out, and then see if there's any soil.
Terrell wants to know if there is one soil better than the other.
Oh, okay.
That's a whole other session. But
now, when you say better, are you referring to type or quality? There are types of soil that are specifically made for seeds, for that initial phase of growth. And there are soils that are, again, specifically made for container gardening. And there's soils that are made for raised beds or in ground. Right. So you'll see it when you go buy soil.
Right. I think for starters, you should look for starter soil.
Yes.
The starter seed, because it will specify on the bag.
The bag,
right.
Yes. Or again, you can use what we've showed you before. I think, something like this, which you'll just say right on the back, seed starter mix, from the dollar store. Again, $1.25, and this will allow you to fill several seed starting pots.
Right. I think that's about 2 quarts worth for that small plank. But also good to note that you can definitely use that compressed seed starter for mature plants as well.
Yes.
If you want to repot something.
Yes. So, again, the other thing that, say why seeds may not germinate is
before you go move from soil, the different types of soil we were talking about.
Yes.
Also mention succulent soil, because there are people who just like succulents, like hen and chicks and cacti.
Okay. All right. Again, don't want to deviate too far, but I do want to touch on that because I tend to like succulents. All right. There's soil specifically for succulent and cacti. All right. So if you have succulents, you cannot use or should not use regular potting soil for succulents. You will see on the bag, and I'll be honest, I used to be, one of those skeptics. It's all soil. What difference does it make? Well, there's a difference. So you do want to be specific about the soil that you need based on what you're trying to do. One of the things about succulents are great for propagating. So like I said, I don't want to get into that, but you don't necessarily have to go out and buy, you know, uh, more succulent plants. If you can get a piece of a succulent plant, you can actually grow a whole new plant, which you can do with actually a lot of plants. So let's see. Now, when you're getting started, based on where you're located, and this is more for if you plan to eventually move your plants outdoors, and in some cases, you more or less you'll have to. And that is knowing when your last frost date, And you can find out, if you just Google last frost date, you're going to get a bunch of links. And you can click on any one of those links and it will take you to a place to figure out your last frost date. Most of them was you type in your zip code and it will tell you your last frost date. Now, what is your last frost date? That is the expected last cold that you'll have for where you live. Now, why is that important? Because it's going to tell you when you should start your seeds indoors so that they are ready to go outdoors, after that last frost date. And this is important with things that are really going to grow really large. Like I just also want to show you something like, if you can see here, there are 3 small plants. Those are all tomato plants that were grown from seeds from a tomato that, we consumed. We kept the seeds, planted the seeds. These are now grown. Each one of these plants will create a vine, and that vine will create a whole bunch of tomatoes. We again, last spring, summer, we basically were able to have tomatoes all the way through fall until we got hit with the first frost, first cold, based on where we live. Tomatoes don't like cold. So cold for tomatoes is, if it gets under 50 degrees, it becomes problematic. And I think we had a couple of below freezing nights, and it basically more or less it basically kills our tomato plants. But we had a nice run, so we really could not complain. But you see, in that pot are, again, 3 small tomato plants that were just started from seeds indoors, with that I think may have come from that Dollar Tree. That pot came from Dollar Tree. The soil may have come from Dollar Tree too. And now, again, we have plants. By the time, the season changes, those tomato plants will be ready to go outside. Okay, so we talked about, also with the last frost date, if you buy seeds, on the back of the seed packet, it will tell you the recommended time for it to be planted outdoors, as well as, if you're going to plant indoors, when you should plant them indoors so that they'll be ready after the frost date. So indoor planting basically gives you a head start. Last year, I didn't do any indoor planting because I wasn't aware of it. So now, doing it, I'm getting a jump start. So when I move outside, the plants outside, they will now be, ahead of when they were, say, last year. So that gives me a larger growing window. So that's the other important thing about your frost date. It's going to tell you, your last frost date and your first frost date. And I know that seems kind of backwards. My last frost date for, if I look it up, I'll get the last frost date for 2024, and then I'll get my first frost date for the winter of 2025. In between will be my growing window. So if I start my seeds indoors, it allows me to maximize the growing window outdoors. Some people say, yeah, well, can you start too early or too late?
Depends on the vegetable.
Yeah, it depends on the vegetable. And again, if you learn how to, create your artificial environment, you can really, learn how to maximize or prepare, like too early. Now, when I say too early, if these were to really grow to the point where they, I have no place to put them and they're ready to go outside and the outdoor temperature is not ready, then I could say I may have started them too early. Now, I will, be honest with you, I don't really get caught up in that, because I'm just trying things, and I have so many seeds, if I, don't measure the time right, I'll just plant some more.
Terrell said that was her next question
What?
about the growing season.
I'm sorry.
About the growing season,
Oh.
the transitioning from indoors to outdoors.
Yeah.
And when to plant them.
Yeah. So your seed packets will tell you, or you can basically Google it. I've been putting together some documents for preferred dates, soil temperatures, and things like that. Which, for those who are interested, I will make it available to kind of just help folks along. Because again, our intention is to really encourage folks to start the process, because growing your own produce is aligned with your own health and wellness. They are very much connected. So because we promote health and wellness, therefore, we also want to encourage people to start growing their own produce. For those of you who have children, for those of you who have children, this is really a good opportunity to help your children connect to nature and to start getting them to develop really good health and wellness habits. For those of us who grew up in urban, areas, urban, suburban, garden, just wasn't exposed to it. As I kind of shared earlier today on Facebook, it just wasn't something you really, didn't think much about. If somebody had a backyard, if they had grass, that was a plus. As a kid growing up, if you were as a child growing up, grass was about playing football. It wasn't about growing. Some people may have had a fruit tree, which was a huge plus. So again, it may be a change of mindset for those who you just weren't exposed to those kind of things. Here, again, these are little seed packets that, again, you can buy off Amazon to, if you're starting to save your seeds, which is one of the things that I constantly stress. If you don't do anything else, start saving your seeds. We tend to do what? We throw them out, special activity. Those, you eat watermelon, what do folks do? You eat watermelon outside, you spit out the seeds. Well, think about it. Each one of those seeds has the potential to grow a vine with more watermelons.
Save them until you're ready.
Yes, as Coach Mitchell just said, I don't know if you heard, is you save them until you're ready. Well, you can get seed packets, like this, envelopes, so that you can log. If you don't want to do this, get brown paper bags. I prefer using these than using plastic bags because, for storing, if you have issues with humidity in your place, the seeds will begin to sprout. And that's not what you want. So using, say, a paper bag or these envelopes are are recommended. All right. I think that's about it. I'm looking. I think I covered as much as possible. And again, it was an overview to help you get started. So what do you want to do this week? Because we're now transitioning into March, spring will be here, and you want to get your jump start is, I'd probably suggest, if nothing else, get yourself some of these trays, get yourself some soil, and get yourself some seeds. If you have a tomato, I say start with tomatoes and peppers because those tend to be the easiest to grow. And be on your way. All right. Any questions? Coach Mitchell, I think you can see.
So Terrell asks if seeds expire?
Another good question.
She got some as a gift and she wanted to know if they expired.
You know, now originally, Terrell, I used to tell people, nope, they never expire, because there have been cases where they have found really old seeds and they were still able to germinate. You know, that's not always the case. Yes, seeds can expire if they have not been properly stored. And when you want to properly store them, usually in a cool place. You know,
Cool, dark, dry.
Hmm?
Cool, dark, dry,
Yes.
or in the freezer?
Yes, cool, dark, dry, or in the freezer. Mhm. What you can do, there are different ways to check to see if the seeds are still valid. And one of the ways is the water test. What's the water test? Is if you place seeds in a little container of water, if the seeds float, they're they're not good. If they sink, let the seeds stay in. Stay in the water for about 15 minutes. And again, if they sink, the seeds are good. If they float, they're not. Just want to say that is not 100%, telltale, but it is what people use. The other thing is, if you're ready to plant them, before you go through the whole trouble of putting them in soil and waiting, is use the paper towel method, where you just take the seeds, place them in a wet paper towel, roll it up, stick it in a Ziploc bag, and store it. If the seeds germinate, you plant them. If they don't, you can toss them. And there's a method. I don't have I can't remember off the top of my head, but if there's a certain number of seeds don't germinate, and I think it's like if 70% of the seeds that you test don't germinate, pretty much you can assume that the whole lot is no good. It's also a reason too, when you plant your seeds, our first thought might be plant one seed, say for instance, going back to the starter, is planting one seed in each container. No, the rule of thumb tends to be plant two. The seeds are old, plant maybe as many as three. And that factors in that, one or two may not germinate. So that's the other, approach. You don't want to do what I did last year, which was throwing all the seeds in one pot, and they practically all germinated. So I had this pot, and I had shared this before. I had a small pot that had all these pepper plants in, and when I tried to count them, had roughly about 100 pepper plants in one pot. And each one of those plants produced up to, I think I may have like 6 or 7 peppers per plant. The peppers were not huge because, again, they were planted in small pots. So, like us as humans, we're only going to grow as much as our environment will allow. So because I had them in small pots, my peppers were relatively small, so, and I had so many, I never bothered to try to transfer them to larger pots. Again, lesson learned. But I did get quite a few, peppers. So we had plenty of peppers last year and plenty of tomatoes, which all started from seeds from things that we consumed. So you can begin growing your own food. Any more questions?
Nope.
All right. Well, I hope I provided you with enough information to get you started. Again, I'm not an experienced gardener. I'm still new to this. I'm still learning, but I didn't want to keep waiting until I felt that I was an expert before I start sharing knowledge, because now you can get started and we all can learn together. So again, any more questions, reach out. We're always here.
Terrell says, thank you. Amazing information.
Oh, you are welcome, and it is my pleasure. All right, Coach Mitchell, you want to jump back in? Thank you so much.
All right. Listen, it has been an absolutely fantastic session. Coach Darren, that was some great information. Thank you so much for that educational tutorial from A to Z on how you can jumpstart growing your own fruit and produce right in your own home. Listen, I'm Coach Mitchell.
And again, I'm Coach Darren.
And until next time, remember, if you do not start now, there can be no next. Join us next Tuesday night for an hopefully empowering, encouraging, and motivating session of the Power of Now on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And we'll see you back here next Wednesday at 8 p.m. for Inside Outside on Wellness Wednesdays to help you along your health and wellness journey.
I just want to say, and I hope next week when we come back on Wednesday that, who do we have? We had Terrell and Tiffany.
Terrell and Tiffany and Kiana popped in.
Okay.
I saw you, girl.
All right, and Kiana, that hopefully one of you will say that you started.
You started.
Hopefully
Okay.
everyone. But
or if you have already started, you'll share with us.
Yes.
As we, discuss other growing methods. So again, thank you for joining us. Have an amazing, amazing evening.
Good night.
Good night.